The Last Roll, a Mountain View mystery, presented by Tales from the Village.
Chapter 1. A Championship to Remember. In the quaint Mountain View retirement village, Colin Crocker's reputation as a lawn bowling virtuoso was well established. His transition to lawn bowling came after he had thoroughly explored the limits of his golfing prowess. As a local amateur golf champion, he had conquered what he could in the golfing world, winning regional tournaments and becoming a respected figure among local golf enthusiasts. But something was missing. Golf taught me patience, Colin would often tell Annie. In golf, you read the landscape. In lawn bowls, you become the landscape. When he discovered lawn bowling, it was like finding a new canvas for his competitive spirit. The precision, the strategy, the subtle nuances of technique, these were challenges that beckoned to him. Where golf had been a playground for his skills, lawn bowling became his true calling. On the morning of the division championships, Colin rose early, his excitement palpable. As he meticulously arranged his bowls, each movement revealed years of refined technique. Annie had never attended one of Colin's lawn bowling matches before. Despite being married to him for decades, she had always politely declined his invitations, preferring her scrapbooking to watching a bunch of grown people roll their balls around the grass. However, she felt like she had lived through every single one of them due to Colin's vivid and passionate storytelling. His detailed recounting of matches, complete with dramatic reenactments of each strategic bowl and whispered commentary about his teammates, had made her feel intimately familiar with the world of lawn bowls. "Watch this, Annie," he called out, demonstrating his signature grip. 11 years of muscle memory right here. Annie watched, half amused, half impressed. "You're arranging those bowls like they're crown jewels," she teased, looking up from her iPad. "These aren't just bowls," Colin proclaimed dramatically. "These are precision instruments of lawn bowling excellence." On the morning of the division championships, something changed. Perhaps it was Colin's infectious excitement or his dramatic proclamation about precision instruments, but Annie decided to accompany him. After meticulously arranging his bowls, he and Annie set off in their car for the Mountain View Bowling Club. The drive was picturesque, winding through the lush mountain roads that led to the club's stunning location. The journey was a short 8-minute drive from their retirement village, though Colin's notoriously slow driving meant he was likely holding up a line of frustrated motorists behind him. Traffic would inevitably build up behind him, with drivers beeping and gesturing aggressively as Colin navigated the mountain roads with the same precision he applied to his bowling technique. As they approached, the club's magnificent setting came into view. Perched high in the mountains, it offered a breathtaking panorama of the valley below. The emerald green of the bowling lawns contrasted beautifully with the rugged mountain landscape surrounding it. The crisp mountain air filled their lungs as they stepped out of the car, invigorating Colin for the match ahead. "Now this," Colin said, gesturing to the sweeping vista, "is what I call a perfect backdrop for lawn bowling excellence." Annie nodded in agreement, taking in the spectacular view. The club's elevated position not only provided a feast for the eyes, but also presented unique challenges for the bowlers, with mountain breezes adding an extra element of complexity to the game. The Mountain View Bowling Club stood as a living museum of regional lawn bowling history, its interior a testament to decades of sporting excellence. Walls were adorned with an impressive array of memorabilia that told the story of lawn bowling in the region. Meticulously arranged banners hung from every available wall space, each representing championship victories dating back to the 1950s. Vintage wooden plaques chronicled the club's most celebrated moments, with gold-embossed lettering highlighting tournament wins and legendary players. "These walls," an old-timer would often say, "they've seen more bowling history than most people have seen life." Today, the atmosphere crackled with competitive energy. Retirees who normally moved at glacial speeds suddenly transformed into laser-focused athletes. Walking sticks became potential measuring tools, and hearing aids were adjusted to catch every strategic whisper. Norm "Bomber" Cochran, the vice-captain of the Mountain View Bowling Club, was conspicuously absent, which was highly unusual for such an important championship match. His missing presence was immediately noticeable, as he typically would have been coordinating pre-match preparations, while Colin focused intently on a tactical assessment of the greens and opponents as they warmed up. "I hope Bomber's okay," Colin remarked to Annie as he adjusted his shoes. "He wouldn't miss this for anything, unless it was serious." "I heard he had a nasty cold," Annie replied thoughtfully. "But knowing Bomber's stubbornness about sports, I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to bowl through it." As it became increasingly clear that Norm would not make it to the match, Colin quickly decided to bring in a replacement from the second division. He turned to a young player named Timmy Jenkins, who had shown promise in his previous games but had an unorthodox bowling style that made Colin uneasy. "Timmy!" Colin called out as he approached the young bowler. "You're up, mate. We need you on our team today." Timmy's eyes widened in surprise. "Me? But I'm not ready for this level of competition." Colin's unease with Timmy Jenkins stemmed from the young bowler's comically unpredictable technique. Watching Timmy bowl was like witnessing a circus act. His dramatic spins and wild wrist movements could send a bowl careening anywhere except its intended target. One moment, Timmy would look like a bowling prodigy, drawing gasps of admiration. The next, his bowl would veer so dramatically that spectators would duck for cover. Where Colin saw lawn bowls as a precise science, Timmy treated it like performance art, complete with unnecessary flourishes and enough unpredictability to give a seasoned captain heart palpitations. His showboating was so outrageous that other club members had started taking bets on whether Timmy's bowl would actually reach the jack or end up in the adjacent parking lot. Colin placed a reassuring hand on Timmy's shoulder. "Just remember what we practiced and trust your instincts." With a deep breath, Timmy nodded and joined the huddle. Colin gathered everyone around for a quick pep talk. "Listen up. We may have lost Bomber today, but we're not losing our spirit. This is our chance to show what we're made of. Let's play for Norm and for each other. No matter what happens out there today, we're a team." The players nodded in agreement, their spirits lifted by Colin's words. Colin's captain's experience became evident as the match got underway. When a tricky crosswind threatened to disrupt play, he adjusted his stance imperceptibly, compensating with a subtle wrist rotation that sent his bowl tracking perfectly. "Technique," he muttered to Timmy, "is 70% understanding the surface, 20% muscle control, and 10% pure bowling magic." The younger player looked bewildered, but veterans nearby nodded respectfully. Colin Crocker wasn't just a bowler, he was a lawn bowling philosopher. Suddenly, a commotion erupted on a nearby green. An older gentleman from one of the lower grades had collapsed, clutching his chest. "Someone call an ambulance!" a voice cried out. Colin, poised to bowl, hesitated for a moment. Then, to everyone's shock, he let his ball fly. "Colin," Annie, who had decided to come watch, gasped in horror. "A man is having a heart attack." "Yes, Annie," Colin replied calmly, watching his bowl curve gracefully towards the jack. "And the paramedics are on their way. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a match to win." As the collapsed man was tended to, the competition continued around him without missing a beat. It was as if the players were engaged in some bizarre game of human obstacle course. As Reggie collapsed on the green, the scene unfolded with an almost surreal calm. The ambulance arrived with flashing lights and a soft wail, but the bowlers of the division championship barely acknowledged its presence. Colin's team, representing the Mountain View Bowling Club, continued their match against their long-standing rivals, the Lower Valley Bowling Club, with remarkable composure. Paramedics carefully attended to Reggie, moving efficiently around the bowling greens. Players subtly adjusted their positions, creating just enough space for the medical team while maintaining their concentration. The jack remained positioned, bowls continued to roll, and the competitive spirit never wavered. Colin, true to his captain's form, directed his team with precision. The Lower Valley team matched their intensity, neither side allowing the medical emergency to disrupt their championship match. Bowls curved across the green, measuring distances, calculating angles. A testament to the seasoned player's professionalism. "Play on," seemed to be the unspoken rule, with only the most minimal acknowledgement of the dramatic medical scene unfolding mere meters from their carefully maintained bowling surface. As the ambulance eventually departed with Reggie, the match continued without missing a beat, a quintessential display of the stoic, focused nature of lawn bowls competition. After the match concluded, the Mountain View Bowling Club members gathered in the clubhouse, celebrating their championship victory and enjoying their post-game beverages. Initially, the conversation about Reggie's collapse was casual, but gradually, concern began to mount. "Did anyone hear how he's doing?" Fred asked, his hearing aid whistling dramatically, effectively breaking the jovial atmosphere. Colin, nursing his traditional post-match ginger beer, a light ale that he claimed kept his bowling arm loose, noticed the mood shifting faster than a bowl on a well-oiled green. Whispers became more urgent, with club members making phone calls as if they were coordinating a covert military operation. "I've heard from my daughter," Margaret announced, leaning in conspiratorially, her reading glasses sliding precariously down her nose. "She works at the local hospital. They're running tests. Something doesn't seem right about Reggie's collapse." The clubhouse fell silent, a remarkable feat for a group of retired lawn bowlers who normally couldn't stop talking if their pension depended on it. The usual post-match banter about disputed measurements and controversial shots evaporated, replaced by genuine worry. Colin exchanged a meaningful glance with Annie, who raised an eyebrow that suggested she was a little disappointed with the bowling tactics. Chapter 2. The Green Under Scrutiny. Unraveling the Mystery. The Mountain View Bowling Club's committee hastily called an extraordinary meeting on a Tuesday evening, breaking their sacred tradition of never disrupting primetime television schedules. As members filed into the clubhouse, the air was thick with tension and wild speculation. Harold, the club president, called the meeting to order by dramatically banging his gavel, which was actually just an old bowling pin. "Friends, bowlers, retirees," he began, his voice quivering with excitement, "we are gathered here tonight to discuss the tragic events surrounding Reggie's collapse and to review our list of suspects." Margaret Donovan, self-appointed amateur sleuth, stood up, her glasses perched precariously on her nose. "I've compiled a list of potential culprits," she announced, producing a comically long scroll of paper. "First there's Colin," she began, as all eyes turned to the former captain. "His competitive nature and that mysterious argument with Reggie make him our prime suspect." Colin rolled his eyes, muttering under his breath. "Then we have Timmy Jenkins," Margaret continued. "That unpredictable bowling style of his could be a cover for more sinister motives." Timmy, the young bowler, looked both confused and oddly flattered to be considered a suspect. "Don't forget about Norm," Fred chimed in, his hearing aid whistling. "His convenient absence on the day of the incident is highly suspicious." The room erupted into murmurs and wild theories, each more outlandish than the last. Someone even suggested that the Lower Valley Bowling Club might have orchestrated the whole thing as an elaborate sabotage attempt. As the night wore on, the list of suspects grew to include everyone from the mysterious trench-coated woman seen near Norm's house to the grumpy groundskeeper who always complained about Reggie's heavy footsteps on his perfectly manicured grass. "Where's Norm?" Fred asked loudly, his hearing aid squealing. "He's never missed an important club meeting before." Margaret, adjusting her glasses, leaned in conspiratorially. "Exactly! And now he's not even here to defend himself. How convenient." Her tone suggested Norm's absence was more than just coincidental. Harold, the club president, dramatically proclaimed, "His unexplained absence makes him look guilty." The room nodded in collective agreement, transforming Norm from respected vice-captain to the meeting's primary person of interest. The fact that Norm wasn't present to hear the wild accusations being leveled against him only seemed to confirm, in the minds of the club members, that he must be hiding something significant. His mysterious cold, and now his missing status at this crucial meeting, made him the perfect target for their amateur sleuthing and wild speculation. The extraordinary meeting of the Mountain View Bowling Club had now taken on an almost farcical air, fueled more by post-season boredom than any concrete evidence. With the bowling season concluded, Club members found themselves with an abundance of free time and a dearth of excitement. The incident with Reggie provided a welcome distraction from the monotony of retirement village life. Harold's dramatic proclamations and Margaret's amateur sleuthing efforts were less about uncovering the truth and more about filling the void left by the end of competitive play. The retirees, accustomed to the thrill of weekly matches, now channeled their energy into wild speculation and increasingly outlandish theories. As the extraordinary meeting drew to a close, Harold cleared his throat dramatically, his face a mask of grave determination. "My fellow bowlers," he announced, his voice quavering with the weight of his words. "In light of these unprecedented circumstances, I propose we take an equally unprecedented action." The room fell silent. Even Fred's hearing aid ceased its incessant whistling. "For the first time in our club's illustrious 76-year history, I move that we suspend both our captain, Colin, and our vice-captain, Norm, pending the completion of our internal investigation." A collective gasp rippled through the assembled members. Harold continued, his tone somber. "This decision is not made lightly, but we must protect the integrity of our beloved club." As Harold passed the resolution to suspend Colin and Norm, he also authorized Margaret to begin an internal investigation. To bolster the investigative team, he specifically appointed Raylene Johnson to assist Margaret, citing her previous investigative experience with the club. "Raylene has a keen eye for detail," Harold declared dramatically, "and her past work on the club's membership dispute will be invaluable to our current investigation." Margaret nodded solemnly, adjusting her reading glasses. With Raylene's addition to the investigative team, the Mountain View Bowling Club now had two of its most meticulous members working to unravel the mystery surrounding Reggie's collapse and the subsequent suspicions about Colin and Norm. The room murmured in agreement, sensing that with Raylene and Margaret on the case, no stone would be left unturned. It was now clear that the suspension of Colin and Norm and the authorization of an internal investigation were as much about creating drama as they were about seeking justice. The club members relished the opportunity to play detective, their enthusiasm for the case inversely proportional to the actual facts at hand. Margaret's initial investigation focused squarely on Norm, the club's vice-captain who was conspicuously absent during the critical championship match. His mysterious disappearance immediately raised suspicions among the club members, with Margaret leading the charge of speculation. "Where was Norm when Reggie collapsed?" Margaret whispered to her bridge partner Doris, her reading glasses sliding down her nose. "It's not like him to miss such an important match." She began compiling a list of potential leads, with Norm's unexplained absence at the top of her investigative notes. Margaret's investigation into Norm's involvement in Reggie's collapse was a whirlwind of activity that lasted just 5 days. Her first lead came from her niece at the local pharmacy, who reported that Norm had filled a prescription for pills the week before the incident. Margaret was convinced Norm may have had an addiction problem. However, a quick call to Norm's neighbor revealed the pills were actually for motion sickness. Margaret's second lead in her investigation of Norm took an unexpected turn. She had heard from her bridge partner, Doris, about Norm's secretive phone calls discussing high stakes and big payoffs. Initially convinced she'd uncovered a gambling ring, Margaret's sleuthing led her to Graham, a Scottish accountant and fellow resident at Mountain Green Lifestyle Village. Graham, known for his financial acumen and thick brogue, revealed that Norm had been consulting him about some slow-moving government bonds he'd invested in. "Aye, Norm's been quite excited about these bonds," Graham explained, adjusting his spectacles. "He's always asking me about yield curves and maturity dates. Not exactly high-stakes gambling, mind you, but Norm treats it like he's playing the stock market." This revelation deflated Margaret's suspicions of a nefarious gambling operation. Instead, it painted a picture of Norm as a cautious investor, more interested in steady returns than risky bets. The big payoffs Doris had overheard were simply Norm's optimistic projections about his conservative investments. With this lead thoroughly debunked, Margaret found herself back at square one, her amateur detective skills momentarily stymied by Norm's mundane financial pursuits. Her final lead seemed promising. Margaret had personally witnessed a woman in a trench coat visiting Norm's unit late at night. Surely this was evidence of a clandestine affair or conspiracy. Yet after staking out Norm's house for an evening, she learned the mysterious visitor was just Norm's sister who worked night shifts and often stopped by for early morning tea. Exhausted and frustrated after 5 days of dead ends, Margaret reluctantly turned her attention to Colin. Well, she muttered to herself, adjusting her glasses, I suppose it's time to see what our esteemed captain has been up to. Colin was seething with indignation as he learned that Norm, one of the most genuine and passive men he had ever encountered, was being subjected to an investigation. The notion that Norm could be implicated in any nefarious plot was utterly preposterous. How could they suspect him? Colin fumed to Annie, shaking his head in disbelief. Norm wouldn't hurt a fly. The poor guy doesn't even really care about bowling. The next day, Colin decided to pay a visit to Norm, concerned about his fellow bowler's well-being amidst the ongoing investigation. As he approached Norm's house, he spotted him in the front yard, meticulously trimming his prized rose bushes. Norm! Colin called out, waving. How are you holding up, mate? Norm looked up, a puzzled expression on his face. Holding up? I'm right as rain, Colin. Just got back from a practice session at the club. My backhand draw is coming along nicely. Colin's jaw dropped. You were at the club? Practicing? But Norm, don't you know you've been suspended? Norm's eyes widened in genuine surprise. Suspended? Me? What for? I thought I was just having a few days off. His improved health and casual demeanor contrasted sharply with the serious investigation swirling around the Mountain View Bowling Club. Norm seemed blissfully unaware of the drama, more concerned with his garden and recovering from his recent illness than the potential implications of his suspension. Colin couldn't help but marvel at Norm's remarkable resilience and seemingly perpetual state of cheerful obliviousness. Here was a man who had been potentially suspended from the club, yet he continued to tend his roses and practice his lawn bowling techniques as if nothing had changed. Chapter 3. Rolling Suspicion. Choosing not to attend the additional board meeting the following week, where Margaret presented her report to the board, Colin opted for a quiet evening at home, watching his favorite YouTuber, Peter Santinello, explore fascinating cultures and communities around the world. It was a welcome distraction from the chaos surrounding him. At the board meeting, Margaret stood before the assembled members, her reading glasses perched precariously on the tip of her nose. She cleared her throat dramatically before launching into her report. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, I've pursued several leads in our investigation, particularly concerning Norm. However, I must admit, we've hit some rather substantial dead ends. Margaret then outlined her findings, admitting to 3 different dead ends. The room filled with murmurs and a few poorly suppressed chuckles. Margaret, sensing the waning confidence in her investigative skills, straightened her back and declared, Given these setbacks, I believe it's time we shift our focus to Colin. I propose we immediately refer this matter to the Mountain Vale Police Department for a proper investigation. As the board members exchanged glances, it was clear that Margaret's amateur sleuthing had led them down a rabbit hole of ridiculous proportions. The next day, as Colin and Annie browsed through the kitchenware section of the local mall, Raylene unexpectedly appeared, her eyes sparkling with the excitement of recent gossip. Colin, Annie, she called out, hurrying towards them. I've just come from the board meeting last night, and you won't believe what happened. Annie raised an eyebrow, setting down a ceramic tea towel. Do tell, she said, knowing full well that Raylene never missed an opportunity to share club drama. Raylene leaned in conspiratorially. The board meeting was absolutely buzzing. Howard and Margaret looked completely incompetent during the final investigation report. They went through every single detail about Norm's life, and in the end, it was clear that he was innocent all along. Colin chuckled, picking up a set of measuring spoons. Well, I could have told them that from the start. As Raylene filled Colin in on the details of the meeting, she recounted a particularly revealing conversation she had with Margaret. You won't believe this, Colin, Raylene said, leaning in conspiratorially. Margaret pulled me aside after the meeting and asked me for ideas on how to investigate you. It was clear as day. She has no real evidence, or even a motive. Raylene went on to describe how Margaret had looked flustered, her reading glasses perched precariously on the tip of her nose. She said to me, "Raylene, dear, you're so observant. How do you think we should go about investigating Colin?" I nearly choked on my tea. Colin couldn't help but let out a sardonic chuckle. "So, they're grasping at straws now, are they? What's next? Interrogating my bowling balls for conspiracy?" "Oh, it gets better," Raylene continued, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "Margaret even suggested we should look into your gardening habits. She thinks your perfectly manicured lawn might be hiding some nefarious secrets. So in the end, I don't think she had any choice but to refer you to the police, hoping that they might be able to find something." As Raylene recounted Margaret's increasingly desperate attempts to find something, anything to pin on Colin, he felt his blood boil hotter than a kettle on the verge of whistleblowing. "Jingoes," he muttered sarcastically. "I can hardly wait for my starring role in this theatrical production of CSI Retirement Village." The absurdity of it all made Colin want to laugh and cry simultaneously as he braced himself for whatever ludicrous accusations might come next in this farcical investigation. As days passed, following Reggie's collapse, Colin now found himself at the center of a whirlwind of suspicion and intrigue. The club members whispered behind his back, casting glances that felt more like daggers than friendly nudges. Didn't Colin and Reggie have some sort of rivalry? Margaret mused one afternoon. "I heard they had a heated argument at the equipment store last week." Colin's competitive nature was now under scrutiny. Rumors swirled that he might have taken drastic measures to eliminate a rival. The club's president, Harold, even suggested that Colin's past as a high-level golfer made him capable of plotting something sinister. "He's got that look in his eye," Harold declared dramatically, gesturing wildly as if he were auditioning for a role in a soap opera. "You know the type, always striving to win at any cost. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a secret stash of bowling sabotage tools." And indeed, Colin did have a stash, though it was far less nefarious than Harold imagined. In his garden shed, Colin kept an assortment of bowling tools that would make any enthusiast's heart race: specialized polishes for his bowls, a collection of grip tapes in every color imaginable, and even a few old bowling balls he'd modified for practice. He often joked that he could open a pro shop right out of his backyard. As Colin's suspension dragged on and the club's suspicions continued to simmer, he began to feel increasingly disillusioned with the Mountain View Bowling Club. Representatives from rival clubs started making discreet inquiries, sensing an opportunity to recruit a captain of his caliber. The Sunnyvale Retirement Lawn Bowls Society began sending subtle feelers, praising his leadership during the championship match and hinting at more appreciative environments. As Colin sat at the kitchen table on day 7 of his suspension, his 4th slice of toast steaming before him, a testament to his legendary appetite for the breakfast staple, his suspension from the Mountain View Bowling Club burned like an unresolved grudge, but he was determined not to let it consume him. Annie watched quietly as he methodically spread Vegemite, each stroke revealing his characteristic precision. "They've treated you like a criminal," she said, "when you've given 12 years of dedication to this club." The whispers of potential recruitment became a balm to Colin's wounded pride. Each overture from another club felt like a validation of his skills and character, a stark contrast to the suspicious glances and hushed accusations at Mountain View Club. After a few minutes of deep contemplation, staring into the middle distance with the intensity of a chess grandmaster, Colin's eyes suddenly hardened with resolve. "Jingoes," he muttered to himself. "They can suspend me, but they can't suspend my passion." He would practice like never before. Not out of anger, but out of pure, unadulterated determination. His decades of sporting experience had taught him that the best revenge was excellence. He would practice, he would improve, and most importantly, he would prove to the Mountain View Bowling Club that Colin Crocker was not a man to be easily dismissed. The morning light caught his determined gaze as he finished his 4th slice of toast, his resolve as crisp and unbreakable as the golden brown bread before him. However, Colin's resolve would soon be tested. Detective Sherlock Holmes arrived at Colin's home in the Mountain View Lifestyle Village, his police car causing quite a stir among the residents. The sight of the official vehicle rolling down the quiet streets created more excitement than when the Flying Dutchman, a nickname for the village's most accident-prone driver, had crashed his car into his own garage. As Holmes pulled up, curious neighbors peeked through their curtains and emerged from their gardens, whispering and pointing. The detective's arrival was clearly the most thrilling event since the Great Bingo Scandal of 2022. Colin opened the door, his face a mixture of annoyance and apprehension. "Detective Holmes, I presume?" he said, eyeing the man's badge. As Detective Sherlock Holmes and his companion entered Colin's home, they were immediately struck by the impressive home entertainment setup. Perched on a trendy wooden platform was an abnormally large television that seemed to dominate the living room, its screen easily 75 inches wide. "Good grief," Holmes muttered to his partner. "That's quite the television for a retirement village resident." The home theater system surrounding the TV was equally impressive. Sleek speakers strategically placed, a state-of-the-art sound system that looked more like it belonged in a professional recording studio than a retiree's living room. The wooden platform beneath the setup was clearly custom-made, its rich timber tones complementing the modern audio-visual equipment. "Not your typical retirement home decor," his companion whispered, clearly impressed by Colin's tech-savvy setup. Holmes nodded, making a mental note that Colin was clearly not your average lawn bowls enthusiast. The television and home theater system suggested a man who appreciated precision and quality, much like his approach to bowling. "Mr. Crocker?" Holmes nodded, stepping inside. "I'm here to ask you a few questions about the incident at the bowling green." "Must be quite the taxpayer-funded expedition," Colin remarked, "driving all the way up here for a baseless investigation about an injured bowler." Holmes, unfazed, noticed the enormous television dominating the room. "Interesting setup you've got here, Mr. Crocker. That's quite a large screen for a retiree. Mind telling me why?" Colin chuckled, grabbing the remote. "YouTube detective. 73 channels dedicated to lawn bowling technique analysis. How else does one maintain championship form without leaving the living room?" He queued up a split-screen comparison of international bowling styles, demonstrating his meticulous approach. "This Malaysian delivery? Completely different wrist action than our local bowlers. Took me 6 months to master that particular flick." Holmes raised an eyebrow. "And this helps with—" "Staying 5 steps ahead of the competition," Colin winked. "While you're chasing phantom conspiracies, I'm studying the future of lawn bowling." "All right, I'll get straight to the point. Where were you on the day of Reggie's collapse?" he asked, his tone serious. "I was right there on the green, playing my match," Colin replied defensively, puffing out his chest. "Where else would I be?" "Yes, but you were also seen arguing with him just days before," Holmes countered, raising an eyebrow as if he had just solved the case of the missing garden gnome. Colin felt his temper rising like steam from an overcooked kettle. "What is this? The Spanish Inquisition?" he snapped, frustration bubbling over. "Jingoes, mate! This is a serious matter, Mr. Crocker. I just need to understand your relationship with Reggie." Colin clenched his fists, feeling the heat rise in his cheeks. "We are friends, and we had a disagreement about our footy team. It wasn't even bowling related." As the questioning continued, Colin's short fuse flared with each probing question from Holmes. He could feel his patience wearing thin like an old bowling shoe. "You think I'm capable of attempted murder over lawn bowls?" "Really?" he exclaimed incredulously. The detective raised an eyebrow, but kept his demeanor calm. "We're just trying to piece together what happened." Colin's heart sank as he realized how quickly things had escalated. The detective's words echoed in his mind as he was placed on suspension from the team while the investigation continued. It felt like a cruel twist of fate. One moment, he was captain of the Division 1 team, and the next, he was a suspect in what felt like an episode of CSI Retirement Village. Later that day, Colin decided it was time to visit an old friend, and so he made his way to the Mountain View Hospital to visit Reggie. As he entered the room, he was pleasantly surprised to see Reggie sitting up in bed, surrounded by his family, looking much improved. "Colin!" Reggie exclaimed, his face lighting up. "There's our champion. Congratulations on the big win, my boy." Colin felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Thanks, Reggie. It's great to see you looking so well. How are you feeling?" Reggie grinned, patting his chest. "Oh, I'm on the mend. No doubt about it. These doctors are taking good care of me." "That's great news, old mate," Colin replied. "Do they know what caused your collapse?" Reggie shrugged. "They're still running tests on the old ticker. But don't you worry about me, Colin. I'll be back on the green before you know it, ready to give you a run for your money." Colin chuckled, shaking his head. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Reggie. Why don't you focus on Division 2 before you think about joining the big leagues?" Annie laughed, enjoying the friendly banter between the two men. "Oh, come on, Reggie. You know Colin would love the competition," she teased. Reggie feigned offense, placing a hand over his heart. "I'll have you know, I was once a formidable opponent. Just wait until I get my practice in." As Colin and Annie left the hospital, he couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Relief at Reggie's recovery, amusement at Norm's obliviousness, and a lingering sense of the absurdity surrounding the entire investigation. Walking through the car park, he noticed a dark sedan that seemed to be lingering just a bit too close, its engine idling. His years of competitive sports had honed his instincts for sensing something amiss. He walked a bit slower, casually glancing over his shoulder. The car appeared to be following his movements, creeping forward as he moved. Colin's heart rate quickened, memories of the ongoing investigation flooding his mind. Just as he was about to confront the vehicle, the driver's window rolled down. An elderly woman with thick glasses peered out, looking utterly confused. "Excuse me," she called out. "Could you tell me where the main entrance is? My husband's having some tests." "Right this way, madam," he said, directing her with a wave, feeling slightly embarrassed by his momentary paranoia. "I can't believe this is happening," Annie said softly to Colin that evening as they drove home together. "What if they find something that implicates you?" "Like what? My secret stash of old bowling shoes?" Colin replied with a nervous chuckle. The following day brought shocking news. Reggie had tragically passed away due to complications from his collapse. Both the village and the bowling club were devastated. In a chaotic scene at Mountain View Hospital, paramedics rushed to attend to another patient who had collapsed in the waiting room, probably from all the drama unfolding around them. Amidst this chaos, some of the village residents overheard snippets of conversations among medical staff discussing Reggie's condition. "His heart condition was more serious than anyone realized," one nurse said urgently as they wheeled another patient past. "They didn't catch it in time." Later, as the village residents were informed of the tragic news, Colin's heart raced as he realized that Reggie's death was not due to foul play, but rather a tragic medical emergency stemming from an undiagnosed heart defect. He felt an overwhelming sense of relief, mixed with sorrow. His innocence was clear, but it came at a terrible cost. The next day, Detective Holmes visited Colin in his home for one final meeting. "Colin," he began, his tone more sympathetic than accusatory now. "The autopsy revealed that Reggie had a rare heart condition that led to his collapse and subsequent death. There's no evidence linking you to any wrongdoing." Colin let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "So I'm cleared? No secret bowling sabotage tools needed?" "Yes," Holmes confirmed with a nod and a slight smile. "But I recommend keeping your competitive spirit in check for a while. Maybe stick to lawn care instead." Chapter 3. Restoration of a Legend. As the investigation wound down, Howard convened a third extraordinary board meeting, this time with all members in attendance. The clubhouse buzzed with anticipation as Margaret and Detective Holmes prepared to deliver their final reports. Margaret stood up, adjusting her reading glasses nervously. "After extensive investigation, including several ridiculous dead ends," she began, her voice quavering slightly, "we have concluded that both Colin and Norm are entirely innocent of any wrongdoing. As Margaret outlined the details of the investigation, Norm nodded and smiled, looking for all the world like someone being told about a pleasant weekend picnic rather than a serious incident. His complete lack of understanding or concern was so pronounced that it almost seemed comical to the other members. "Isn't this all terribly exciting?" Norm remarked at one point, completely missing the tension in the room. His cheerful demeanor stood in stark contrast to the serious atmosphere, making him appear either incredibly naive or wonderfully zen about the entire situation. Finally, Detective Holmes then took the floor, explaining that Reggie's tragic death was due to an undiagnosed heart condition. "There's no evidence linking Mr. Crocker or Mr. Cochrane to any foul play," he stated firmly. The club members exchanged glances of relief and satisfaction. Howard, looking flustered, attempted to salvage some dignity. "Well, we certainly conducted a thorough investigation, didn't we?" he said, his voice lacking conviction. As the meeting adjourned, whispers circulated among the members. "Can you believe we wasted all this time?" one muttered. "Howard and Margaret really botched this one," another agreed. Colin, feeling vindicated but exhausted, couldn't help but shake his head at the incompetence displayed by Howard and Margaret throughout the ordeal. After the final meeting concluded, Detective Holmes and Colin gathered around a table of sandwiches which the members were enjoying. Most of the regular members were up at the bar at this point, so they were now able to hear each other enough to speak. "Ham or turkey?" Holmes asked, sliding a plate across the table. Colin chuckled. "I'll take ham. Always preferred it to turkey. Much like how I prefer a precise bowl to a wild throw." "Well, that was quite the ordeal," Howard said, adjusting his glasses nervously. "I suppose we all got a bit carried away with the investigation." Norm, looking cheerful as ever, chimed in, "Investigation? Oh, was that what all the fuss was about? I thought we were planning a surprise party for someone." Colin and Detective Holmes exchanged bemused glances. "Norm, we've been discussing this for weeks," Howard explained patiently. "There was a whole inquiry about Reggie's collapse and your involvement." "Oh, right," Norm exclaimed, his face lighting up with recognition. "Is that why everyone's been so serious lately?" Detective Holmes couldn't suppress a chuckle. "Mr. Crocker," he said, turning to Colin, "I must say, you have some interesting teammates." Colin nodded, taking a bite of his sandwich. "You're not wrong there. Though I must admit, Norm's obliviousness might just be the secret to his excellent bowling form. No pressure, you see." As they ate, Holmes couldn't resist one last comment. "You know, Mr. Crocker, you're the most intense lawn bowler I've ever encountered. Most people would have panicked during Reggie's collapse. You just kept playing." "Technique is everything," Colin replied, taking a bite of his sandwich. 70% understanding the surface, 20% muscle control, and 10% pure bowling magic. That applies to investigations too, I suppose." Holmes laughed, raising his sandwich in a mock toast. "To solving mysteries, on and off the bowling green." Colin nodded, appreciating the camaraderie that had replaced the earlier tension. Another mystery solved, another sandwich enjoyed. The club members stayed long into the night, their usual reserved demeanor replaced by a jubilant atmosphere. Drinks flowed, stories were shared, and the camaraderie of the Mountain View Bowling Club shone brightly. Laughter echoed through the clubhouse as members celebrated the resolution of the investigation, and Colin, ever the responsible captain, decided to leave early. "Got to make that treacherous 8-minute drive home," he joked to Annie, knowing full well his notoriously slow driving would likely turn the short journey into a minor expedition. In the weeks following the investigation, Colin's reputation transformed from that of a respected captain to a near-mythical figure within the bowling community. Stories of his unwavering composure during Reggie's collapse, his tactical brilliance, and his ultimate vindication spread through retirement villages like wildfire. Younger bowlers would gather around, listening intently to veterans recount how Colin had maintained his focus during the most dramatic match in Mountain Green Lifestyle Village history. His bowling style, part science, part artistry, became something of local folklore, with club members referring to particularly precise shots as pulling a crocker on the green. Representatives from the Lower Valley Bowling Club and even the distant Sunnyvale Retirement Lawn Bowl Society continued making inquiries. They would casually drop by the Mountain View Bowling Club, ostensibly for friendly chat, but with thinly veiled intentions of recruiting Colin. "We heard about how you handled that medical emergency," one club representative would say, "and we think you might be just the captain we're looking for." Annie found the whole situation amusing. "Careful," she would tease Colin, "or you'll start a bidding war." Colin, for his part, remained loyal to Mountain View, but the attention was a welcome validation of his skills. These inquiries served as a testament to his reputation, not just as a bowler, but as a leader who could maintain composure under the most extraordinary circumstances. The whispers of potential recruitment became a running joke among the Mountain View Club members, with Harold dramatically declaring that Colin was now the most wanted man in lawn bowling. In honor of Reggie's memory, both Mountain View and Lower Valley clubs decided to institute an annual memorial match dedicated solely to him, a way for everyone involved to remember not only a great bowler, but also a wonderful person who brought joy, laughter into lives those around him. The first annual memorial match took place under sunny skies, filled laughter camaraderie. Players wore black armbands emblazoned with initials RG, honoring legacy friend gone too soon. As life returned to normalcy, Colin resumed his bowling career with renewed determination, but also a newfound perspective on friendship and community within the club. The mystery surrounding Reggie's tragic death served as a poignant reminder of life's fragility, and perhaps even more importantly, that sometimes it's better to keep your competitive edge under wraps, especially when it comes to your fellow bowlers.